Hello, and welcome to First Geek 411's book club. Tonight we'll be talking about The Ruby's Curse by Alex Kingston. Ooh. Wow.
Chris read it with his mind.
Digitally. Had to use the speed reading app, okay?
All right. Before we get into that, you can find us at all the social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as OneGeek411. Come chat and hang out with us at our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. You can check out our show notes on our website, onegeek411.com, and watch our regular podcast show on Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time, and find all our videos over at YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out our sweet, sweet merch at the Redbubble store. I'm Shanine, and with me, I have fellow Doctor Who fanatic, Emma.
Yay! Doctor Who!
Woo! And another fan, Cameron.
Hello, hello. Let's do this. I'm ready. River on rocks.
Woo! And also Chris.
And technically,
Mediocre
I'm going
opinion.
to tear apart your fandom right now. No.
Okay.
Burn it to the ground.
My feelings are already hurt.
I'm just kidding.
preemptively.
All right. So, like
We
I
love
said, we read The Ruby's Curse by Alex Kingston, River Song herself. In this Doctor Who adventure, River is in a high security prison in the future in space, just trying to get some peace and quiet to write her new Melody Malone detective novel. She becomes friends with a prisoner, I think named Ventrian. I was going to double check that, and then I
Yes.
didn't. It is
It is
Okay.
Ventrian.
Yes.
Ventrian. Okay. They talk through the vents and discover some similarities between her novel, in which Melody Malone is trying to solve the case of a ruby that originally belonged to Cleopatra and is said to carry a curse that will kill anyone who obtains it, and Ventrian's story, where he obtains a device with the power and will to destroy the universe. Ventrian's story is overheard, and space gangsters come to find out where the device is now hidden. River and Ventrian must travel through space and time to destroy the device, though Ventrian is unable to do so, and River must follow his clues to the device. Along the way, River meets Cleopatra, as well as her very own fictional Melody come to life. And the rest is spoilers. A lot of that was probably spoilers. I just
Like,
wanted to say it.
It's like, I think, isn't that the point?
All spoilers.
That is
All
a
spoilers.
very detailed part of River's personality.
All right. So, first impressions in like 10 words or less.
Galadriel takes the ring. Or needs hobbits? I don't-
Needs hobbits?
River's got some opinions.
I wished it would have been a TV episode.
This would have been a fun episode.
I actually liked it way more than I was expecting to, and I was expecting to like it. So, all right. We've read a lot of book to movie books in book club, but this is our first visual medium to book. Do you think this changed the reading experience for you?
I'm a little biased because I have technically read several other Doctor Who novels in the past. But that being said, those that I have read were all like doctor centered. This was the first one that was like he wasn't involved at all. It was like a side character, and it was very enjoyable. I mean, for me, it didn't change the experience too much, just because it was like I enjoy consuming Doctor Who content in whatever format it's in. So like it's just like different sides of the whole concept and universe come out in different mediums. So like in this, we saw a different side of the universe that we might not necessarily have seen on the screen or in a game. This is much more manageable to accomplish in a book when you don't have to deal with production or coding or whatever. So
As someone who hasn't watched Doctor Who, I'm happy they included like character introductions before the book started.
mhm.
Because I'm like, is this guy supposed to be important? I have no idea.
Funny you mentioned that because I didn't reference it once at all. So
No, it said spoilers, so I skipped past it.
yeah, so did I. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, it didn't
So
spoil anything.
I'm glad it was useful for you. I just didn't reference it once, but they probably put that in there for people like you. So
Yep. For me, like, I think this is interesting. Like, I think there's definitely challenges of any time something tries to switch medium, where like so much of River's character is how she talks and how she interacts with other people. And there are definitely parts of this that I feel like did a little bit better than others with that. But overall, I think it was a good way of bringing the medium into something different. Like obviously there are other Doctor Who books. There's tons of other like IPs that have done this kind of thing before. But I think they did a good job of making it feel like an episode without trying to like strictly hold to that exact formula.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it was just fun. And like a lot of the times I would hear like the narration in River's voice, and I don't know, just getting to see everything in my head without having to like try too hard because I know what it all looks like already
Mm-hmm.
was nice.
Yeah, it was definitely nice to have something like that centered on River as a character too. Like she's become such an integral part of the series. As it mentions in the acknowledgments, she like that whole character initially was just meant to be a one-off character, and then they took that one off and like ran with it, and it became such like she became such an important character that was so well loved. And it was nice to, even if it was a bit floppy at times, like have a whole adventure that was just on her. And because she's a lot like the Doctor in the sense of like she just goes out there and does her own thing, even if it's questionable at times, but like it's fun and it's adventurous. And
Yeah.
she's
kind of I don't know if rowdy is the right word, because like the Doctor is very rowdy, but like she's very like I'm going to even make more of a scene than the Doctor would make. And I think it's it's fun to see that character because it's the type of character that is just fun to have in a story.
Yeah. And she's going to do it intentionally. Like a lot of the time when the Doctor makes a scene, he doesn't really intend to, he just does. It's like a side effect almost. But she goes out to make a scene. But yeah.
Yeah. River is not actually a character that I have super loved in the past.
Overall, like she's been a more accepted character than some others.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way.
I never got super into River like it seems so many other people have. I don't know. I think I just never super bought like the relationship between her and the Doctor.
That's fair.
Like,
have we formally transitioned into the next question? Into question 3, or did
We
I miss that we
I haven't.
introed? Okay.
I'm just going for it. Yeah, but having her in her own adventure, doing her own thing, made me appreciate her more as a character, I think.
Yeah.
To segue into our next question, what was your familiarity with Doctor Who before, especially River's character?
Okay,
So-
now I can give my comment.
Yeah. So exactly. So in response, so for me, and I've said this on the normal podcast before, River showing up is when I became a Doctor Who fan. So like this character is very much, not that she's the only thing I like about Doctor Who by any means, but the introduction of her character, of this arc, in Silence in the Library, is when the show clicked for me.
Yeah.
Like it's when it kind of went from being just a show that we were watching to a show that I was really enjoying. Yeah. And not necessarily strictly because River was there, but she's kind of the catalyst for them changing some of how their stories are going. And so like this character means a lot to me because it's very much that turning point in the fandom for me, with New Who. And then especially as
yeah,
because
I have a comment that sort of stems off of that. Continue.
And then especially as like her relationship with Matt Smith's doctor gets fleshed out, where I like I said, it's one of those that like this is one of like, especially like in terms of side characters, she's probably my favorite side character in Doctor Who. And so I was super excited about this.
So you're talking about her introduction. One of the main things that I love about River and her whole like existence in the show is that her introduction is so unique to like just not just in Doctor Who, but in TV in general. Like you literally get this character who no one has seen before, not even the audience. Like there's this whole thing within the film industry that's called insider information, where the audience knows something. Maybe one character knows it, maybe two characters know it, but not everyone knows it in the show. But in this case, it's kind of like reverse insider info, where one very specific character knows a lot of things, but literally no one else, not even the audience, knows. So it's this, she has this unique introduction where the doctor meets her, and immediately we realize she knows this guy, but none of us have ever seen her before.
Yeah. And she arguably knows the doctor better than he knows himself.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those.
Yeah. And it's like, it was so well written and so well done in a way that was like, it was clear to the audience that she knew this guy in a very intimate way, but like there was a like mystery to it. We're just like, well, how, why, who are you? Even we don't know who you are. And it was such a unique introduction that it like it brought in this character that like we all wanted to know more, because then she dies at the end of that episode. Spoiler alert, it's been several years since that episode. Like,
sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Chris. And it's just like
everything. I have no intention.
Well, now we need to know more, because like you can't just throw that at us and then like move on. You can't just give us a character that seems to know everything about your title character and then just kill him off again. And it was just such a fascinating introduction that drew me into her character and personality. That I was like, I want to know more about this person, because like I've never seen that done before, and like I just want to know more. And that those two library episodes are some of my favorite, partially because of River and how her whole character was brought in, even if she was meant as a one-off character for those two episodes, because that was a 2-episode storyline from what I remember. And yeah.
This book. It's my history with this character.
Hey, you had one thing and you got through it.
I did it.
All right. What was your favorite part?
So I really liked whenever River was in New York. Like I really liked getting to see her take on those events, her getting to be there. I'm glad that we got to see Amy and Worry, at least very briefly. But I really enjoyed getting those time periods. And then I liked the breakout, like when she has to actually like escape and get to Ventrius and get him out. Like I thought that was a very fun like take on. Again, we know she's been breaking in and out of prison for decades, like a very long time, like, and getting to like kind of get to see that I thought was really cool, since that is such a big part of her character.
Yeah, I'd agree on the breakout, and or just like being in the prison or whatever it is. Just because it kind of set her up, like for as someone that had no idea who she is, or like it provided context for her skills, I guess. But also, I really liked when she realized she forgot her book after the breakout. And she relates like the pain to it's like worse than gallstones in birth. Like, how that she knew about that.
I liked the part where Jack showed up because I'm a fan of Jack. He was only there for like a page and a half, but I marked it with a sticky note because I was so excited. I was like, guys, it's Captain Jack. He's here. Everyone's favorite immortal. So I just like I also liked the prison breakout scene, but like that one scene got me so excited I put a sticky note on it. So, there's that.
And she picks up an eyeball. I like that.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, doctor's busy right now. So you got redirected to his emergency hotline answering machine, and I picked it up. So I'm here to rescue you. Bye. And that's it. And it was just like this very brief moment of, he's busy. I'm here to get you instead. Okay. Hello. Goodbye. You're saved. Pat on the head. Like, this is just like thrown in there, I feel like more as like a fan service. But as a fan, I'm just like, I'm here for it. I love it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also die happily.
I also love the acknowledgement of how time travel works in Doctor Who there. Like with that scene of like, if I survive, I'll send a message and someone will come rescue me.
Yeah.
Oh, and look, someone showed up. Wow.
It worked.
I just love that, like that take on time travel where you're allowed to like very much intersect your own timeline in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a fun thing that they do throughout the series, but getting to see like that type of time travel again brought in here.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So, like Chris briefly mentioned, there are a lot of references to being a writer. I felt a lot of them. For example, there's a reason why the writer's curse is may your rewrites never end. And also talking about when she's reading Ventrian's edition of the novel, and there's Phil randomly inserted everywhere, but none of the verbs have been changed to agree with the subject. And she says, I'd have them corrected for the second edition. I'm not a monster.
Yeah, I love that.
Is that how you
I
feel
love
right
that
now doing your
yeah, Rimo.
Yeah.
But I love that both that they called it out at like the end of the chapter. Like, who is Phil? But then in the next chapter, they actually break down the grammar. And it's like, thank you. Because I also was like, who's Phil? But I definitely would have not noticed like as many of the grammatical mistakes had they not been called out. And so I was just like, thank you for calling this out and showing this to all of us. I missed it. I'm the reason that we needed this. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yeah, they definitely did a good job of acknowledging both sides of the audience spectrum, if you will. Like both the diehards and the like people who are just reading it casually, and then the like grammar Nazis and then the not grammar people. So like I wouldn't have picked up, I honestly didn't pick that up until she was like, who the heck is Phil? And I was like, there's a Phil? I missed that. Because I just skimmed through it. So then I had to go back and reread it and go, oh yeah, there is a Phil. So
For me though, I think my favorite part, kind of coming from the point of view of a reader and a writer, was River being put into her own fictional world and like interacting with her characters, but them like not really interacting unless she's like actively talking to them. It was fun. I liked it. Right. Any least favorite parts?
Sorry, Shanine.
Yeah.
My least favorite part was when River was in her own book and interacting.
yeah.
And like I feel like it's one of those things where I enjoyed the concept of it. And I really liked the conceits that they how they set it up, that she's aware that she's in the book. And there's very much the conceits that like, oh, when people aren't part of the plot, they just kind of are there. Like, I thought it was really interesting how like she's able to like observe that, because like it's a very Doctor Who thing. It just felt long.
Yeah.
And like I liked the payoff. I think at the end when Melody gets brought into the actual like real world for a bit, I thought that was really cool. It's a very cool payoff, but it just felt like she was on that airboat for a long time.
That was a really long couple of chapters, to be fair.
I
Not
think
wrong.
at one point it was just one long chapter that was like 40 pages or something. Because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll reach to the end of this chapter and then like go to bed or whatever. And then I looked and the chapter was like, I had like another 35 or 40 pages in it. And I was like, never mind. I'm
I
not
feel like
reading to the end of the chapter.
Yeah. I feel like that chapter took me longer to get through than the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And part of that was like just timing. Like when I got to that chapter, it was very much the like, okay, I don't have time to knock all this out. So I feel like that chapter took me like 3 nights to get through, just because I never really had enough time to sit down and read. And again, I feel like this is making it over dramatic. I still think it's a good part of the book. And it's kind of the like, it's like not what's the worst, but like what's the least bad or the least good kind of thing. But it's like, I just feel like for how it like worked out for me timing wise, it was just very hard to like power through.
It did feel a little dry to me. I don't know if that was just a me thing. Not that it was like overly terrible, but it did just feel like there's this whole thing in that section where she's trying not to get sort of sucked into playing a character essentially in her brain. Like she's trying not to become a character of the book, and I feel like they could have played that up more in her thought process. And then when it flips to be Melody's side of things, they could have thrown more of that in there to create more tension or something. Like, oh, like they mention at one point how she needs her very specific lipstick, but that's like the one thing from Melody's point of view that's like they could have thrown some more things in there where it was like, oh, that's an odd thing to say, but she can't exactly explain why she said it. And they could have even just played more off of that to like make it a bit more fun and like tension building of like there's this underlying tension of not River trying not to become a character in the book. So she kind of has a time limit.
Yeah, for me, it just felt out of place and a little convoluted, especially when it switched to Melody's narration. I'm like, okay. And then as it's been mentioned, it was longer portion of the book. I'm like, and it's like trying to challenge me to have solved the crime beforehand. And I'm like, I don't care about this part. Move on. It's like I feel like we should have figured out what's going on with this Eye of Anubis or whatever it was again, by now, and we haven't because now we're stuck in this fictional world, and then even going into like the philosophy of, well, what if your fictional characters gain sentience? Oh, well, they don't know what scent or colors are. I'm like, it's like, okay, good point. Is that the point of the book? It's one of my biggest gripes. I'm like, okay. So like if I would have skipped that, like I feel like the book would have been just fine without it too.
Yeah. I mean, there is a good concept there for like a whole nother book, like in that idea.
Yeah, it was bookception.
Yeah. It didn't totally fit. But it was like, oh, that's an interesting thing I wouldn't have thought about. But also, does it really fit here?
And like, I'm already confused with the timey-wimey stuff. Why are you adding this weird interdimensional, like, apparently when you write a book, you create another dimension, actually, where these characters exist. And you might end up in
wobbly, timey-wimey.
Yeah.
It's not a timey-wimey thing, though. That's a dimensional thing. It doesn't nothing to do with time.
It's a wibbly-wobbly thing.
So, that was my gripe. That's my gripe. Yeah, my least favorite part. Sorry, Shadid.
It's okay. I understand. My least favorite part, I didn't like super hate it or anything. It just felt like very weird and like what is happening right now was when River was watching Caesar cross the Rubicon and then suddenly is like stealing trumpets and then playing with the trumpeters when the Saints go marching in and they're like, what?
Yeah. I feel like that was like one of those things to like the thing I've said at the very beginning that would have gone a lot better in an episode versus in the book. Like getting to see like River do that, I think would have been very cool. But especially since
that realization hit that she is the supposed goddess or whatever.
It just like ends up not mattering. Like there's just like literally no significance to
that. It was a throwaway scene. That's the thing about it.
Yep.
So throw away, I don't even remember it. Also, speaking of Caesar, like, thanks for reiterating how that's a fixed point in time. Thanks. Like 5 times.
Yeah.
Did I mention that the death of Caesar is a fixed point in time?
Yeah. And I feel like
for like the 5th time.
Yeah. That's always like one of the funny things with time travel stories is it's like I guess this is like a theme in Doctor Who is what you can change versus what you can't. And I feel like whenever they get to those, like, oh, I can't do anything. It's like, but you do stuff literally all the time, especially like in River's case where like she's not as strictly bound by the same rules. Like, obviously she's still like aware of paradoxes and all of that kind of stuff, but
her moral code is different.
Yeah, she's not as concerned about the greater
good.
Yeah.
I also really want to know what ended up happening with Cleopatra.
She wandered off and lived a fairly normal life.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Whatever it meant in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. I want to know.
She lived a life ready to show up in any episode of the show because this did not ruin
She
anything.
won out and was
Yeah.
murdered as a
Like-
peasant 3 days later.
Like she's literally can show up anytime in any future episode without worrying about greater impacts on the canon. So
All right. So besides River, who obviously takes up the majority of the book, did you have any other favorite characters or characters that stood out to you?
This random character, Phil, we know nothing about. Who just shows up in the middle of the book.
I mean, he didn't end up being Cleopatra's son, so kind of important.
He was there all along.
I
That
did
was
like
Phil all along.
I did like moments with Ventrion. Especially like during the breakout when River's trying to like give him clues. He's like, "Oh, you could have literally just used my example, but no."
The definition of a loading screen.
I
Yeah.
wish we would have saw him like gotten more other than like toward the end, other than he changed my book and like he kind of that's the only references we actually get. Like I would have enjoyed a little more about like what happened after he left, like what was his like ultimately it's all about what his plan was from there on, kind of, but just written from her figuring it out and putting the pieces together, from River figuring it out and putting the pieces together. But yeah, I like Ventrion. It's kind of like the bro you call when you need to get out of trouble with your significant other. You're like, but you're just like giving the look, or like, subtly it's like, I was with you, remember? He's that guy. He's like, oh yeah, I got you. Just takes him a moment.
The default with my best friend and I. If anyone else asks about, oh, are you with Elizabeth? Yes. Even if I wasn't, just yes.
I like Melody. I mean, I feel which I kind of feels like a cop out.
'Cause you
Like
River. It is.
I can't pick River, so I picked the person who is like the personification of River.
It's River putting herself in book form.
Yeah.
Right. But I'll say
River
like,
inserting herself into
Yes.
her own books.
into the time period where her parents are stuck.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed like getting to see Melody like actually be a PI. Like I thought that was part of the story where like we actually kind of get to see get to see that side of it. Like we knew of the other book, but actually getting to see this part of it, I thought was really fun. Getting to see almost like what is River's take on this time period that she didn't live in, and she really has no like connection to, like up until like her parents get stuck there. So I really enjoyed that part of it, and kind of up until River gets brought into the story, I guess I'll say, but gets brought into that part of the story. But yeah, I really enjoyed the actual like PI side of Melody.
Yeah, I think I actually really enjoyed the parts with Cleopatra.
Cleopatra's probably my number 2.
She's just cool.
Yeah.
And then also for kicks, Mrs. Peterson Lee, who thinks she's Cleopatra.
I mean, we don't know she's not.
I mean, it is very
So-
possible she is actually Cleopatra reincarnated.
I mean, Phil is there. So
Yeah.
like in the world, or like to use Chris's thing, in the dimension that this book created, like if Phil can be there, she could be Cleopatra.
So I just
Fair
learned this courtesy of this book. I did not know that Cleopatra was actually of Greek descent. I just Googled it to verify, and she was actually of Greek descent, and I did not know that, and now I do. And I find that interesting for whatever reason. So anyway, it's only kind of related, But I've just learned something, guys, and I would like to put that out there.
All right. Any least favorite characters?
Miss Jones. I found her somewhat annoying in general.
I mean, to be fair,
She did do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
spoiler alert, she is the murderer.
She's the bad guy.
I didn't like her even before I learned
Yeah.
she was the murderer. It was just like you're fawning too much over this guy. I don't like it.
Ruined the entire plan.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of those characters that I actually don't necessarily care for Melody. But
Yeah, and that's kind of the part that like I liked at the beginning with Melody. If I think Melody interacting with all of them individually was very interesting. But like once the group gets stuck on the airboat,
it's like Melody was fine until we were in the book world. And then I got to know her a little better. I'm like, okay. And maybe it's just because that's my least favorite part of the book that I don't care for Melody. I don't know.
For me, I felt like I was supposed to care for Ventrian a lot more than I did. Like it was one of those that like I don't know. I just felt like I was like, okay, like he just didn't matter. Like it was one of those things that like it's a type of side character that like would show up in like you won't believe this actor was in this show.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I felt about that character, especially like since we just get them talking through like the air duct for the first like set of chapters with him. Like we don't really ever get to see them interact other than the jailbreak, which is admittedly very cool. But I did feel like I was supposed to care about him. And then kind of going to the Mrs. Jones thing, Harry just got like super insufferable the farther we got in the book. Like at the beginning, he was like, okay, like I get that this is your one note. But then like by the time that just kept going and it was like, okay, here we are. I just felt like that, like again, it just got worse and worse for him the longer the book went.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing about Harry. He just ends up being so gross and creepy.
Right.
All right, so we have touched on this, but what did you think of the book within a book format and how the fictional reality and fictional fiction came together in the end?
I don't like books within books. I you know, at first it was fine. Okay, so I don't mind the books within books the way it was at the beginning. It's like obviously the book world just throws me through a loop. But like I didn't mind like when she's telling the book story portion like to Ventrion. Like that part was all right. I like that. I enjoyed that narration. But it's just the book world part. Part of me is partial to the idea of like referencing a book and then developing it as like a supplement material in terms of like world building, like fully envelop me. Give me research material to more fully pulley. Like if you write it into the book though, it just is like, okay, this is all I have to read now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like books when the book within a book is in the footnote.
Go check out.
Yeah.
Amazing
Like,
Spider-Man.
make me go buy
number
more.
3.
Okay, actually,
Yeah.
make it a capitalist economy here, and just like get that money. I'm okay with that. Like, oh, I gotta know. Because I like that sense of like mystery. It's like, ooh, but if I've read this, that makes me more of a fan, kind of thing. Not necessarily as a gatekeeper, but like it's like, but have you read the supplement material? It's like going through Skyrim and reading the books. Okay. I like that. I don't know, but that's me.
I mean, I liked it for the most part. There definitely were some moments that could have been done better, like that one section where she was in the book, or been more like smoothed out. Um, I have read other books where the book within a book has been done a bit better, if you will, overall. I'm thinking specifically of um, the Name of the Wind books, where it's a story within a story, where there's two simultaneous stories that focus on the same character. But for what it is, it's not terrible. And I do think that she did a good job of sort of putting it in a different context of a bit more science fiction-y, getting sucked into it, and like having a melody be brought out from it. Like, it's not just telling a story inside another story. It's like there's some boundaries crossed between the reality of the book and the reality of the other book or whatever. But again, it could have been smoothed out a bit, in my humble opinion.
I thought it was cute. Like, it's one of those that's like I really like it. It felt very Doctor Who to like, oh, your book's been rewritten and then you got put in the book and that rewrote the book again.
Yeah.
That just felt like a very Doctor Who like twist, in air quotes. And so I thought that was cute. And like the idea that like, even down to like, oh, well, we can't publish this because of spoilers, so we'll release this like 10 years late. Like we'll leave this as like a last will and testament to publish this in the year 2022. And so I just thought that was cute. Like, I don't want to necessarily just harp on everything that we've already said about the airboat scene, but just to go back to what we said for Treasure Island, if it was a third shorter, like we would have been good. But I really did like the payoff. I like that end. I like getting to see Melody come into the real world. And I like that actually like matters to the plot. That like her being there is actually kind of what gives River the power to overcome the Eye of Horus. I thought that was very nice. That it's the and it's like that. I liked that payoff, even though I didn't necessarily like how we got there.
Yeah, payoff was great. Just could have explained it and didn't need as much.
All right. So since I get to have the last word about it, I feel like I win. So
fair.
I really liked it. I thought it was really fun in the beginning, kind of going back and forth between like the real world and the fictional world. And I was like equally interested in both of the plot lines and like, wanted to solve the mystery with Melody and wanted to do stuff with River, and it was fun and I liked it, and like it felt like they still fit together and you could see like relations in between the stories. And then in the end, when they came together to impact each other's stories, where River was impacting the outcome of her fictional story from within her fictional story and not just as an author, and the fictional world impacting how River is finding the Eye of Horus device, and like, how they were actually intertwined and impacting each other instead of just like both existing. I liked it and I thought it was great.
I do have to say, I do like the fact that the book that we read becomes like the final product
Yeah.
of the whole storyline. Like, I didn't really like figure that out until the end that that's where they were going with it. But it was a neat like little addition of like the book you literally just read is the final thing that like she wrote that's going to be released in several years. And I thought that was a lot of fun and a super neat little addition of like you instead of just like having an in story book that someone wrote and you're like, oh, I wish that's something I could read that doesn't actually exist. It's like, no, but this is a thing that exists that you just finished reading. That's something I really liked. So
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot too. Like bringing us as readers into the story. It was fun.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Maybe they'll reference it in the next season of Doctor Who.
which is
Continuity.
currently happening.
Yeah.
Might I remind you? But I've only seen the first episode because again I'm busy. So you know, I'm like 3 episodes behind.
All right. What did you think of the narrator? Narrators.
I mean, I've always liked River, so I thought it was quite enjoyable. And then to see an alternate side of her, or sort of how she pictured herself in a different context, was fun.
Yeah. I mean, I already gushed about River earlier. And again, I really wish this was an episode, or like a little, or even like a radio drama kind of thing. I would, there's so much like the narration is so very much the character of River that I really wish that we got to hear it delivered. And maybe Alex does the audiobook and that would be awesome. I don't know that, but I feel like that would be a really cool touch just to like it left. I feel like I really liked the narrator and it made me wish it was actually like Alex
feel
delivering
like
these lines.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seemed like
She
okay.
did narrate it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 8.5 hours. And she did read it, yes.
Okay, cool. I feel like that's like the again, she's like very much iconic in this role.
Yeah.
That like it left me wishing that I got to also hear her deliver the lines. So
I honestly might get the audiobook and listen to it again just for Alex Kingston reading it. Just because she is, like you mentioned, like so iconic in that role. And like she embodies that character to the fullest. Like, I mean, some actors are just actors who do their jobs really well, and then other actors are that character. Like,
I mean,
Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. He is Tony Stark.
she is so much that character. She wrote the book.
Yeah.
she is the book.
She's so much River Song that she just wrote a book about it because she could.
Yeah. It's like, do you want your like actor like inserts? So we gave you an insert of the insert. So
yeah.
Like just put River Song as the author of this book.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
I'm not usually an audiobook person, but I feel like that one would be worth it.
Yeah.
Sandman's worth it. Audiobook form, at least. Yeah. Like, it was fine. I feel like I might need more subtext to be fully, like, to fully care about the narrator or, River in this case, or multiple narrators. But, yeah.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it does cater a bit more to the Doctor Who fan.
I mean, it does have
like
Doctor
they
Who
have
in
all
the
those
title, so
built-in subtext.
It's kind of what I
like, already
expected.
knowing the character.
It's definitely what I expected in terms of
Yeah.
not having watched Doctor Who and having no reference
I
point.
feel like if they were gonna try and write a Doctor Who book to cater to non-Doctor Who people, they would have done it completely differently. So, but I got you.
All right. I'm skipping that one. What did you think?
I gotta know what it was now.
What did you think of the time travel? Both like River actually like time traveling as well as the time hopping between stories and things like that. And what was your favorite era that we experienced in the novel?
I mean,
So-
I've always been a
Go ahead.
bit of a fan for time travel, obviously, given that I'm a Doctor Who fan. But specifically, this brought me back to my minor, I say that, minor, in quotes, obsession with ancient Egypt in elementary school. I thought it was the coolest thing on the planet. And like had one of those like big, oh geez, it was a whole series of books. It was like the archaeology of ancient Egypt, and then there was another one in the series that was like about dragons, and another one about I don't know what else. I had the one on dragons and the one on Egypt, ancient Egypt. I thought ancient Egypt was so cool, and I wanted to go back and just like live in that era.
But then you stopped
So,
caring
like-
about Egypt and got into yo-yos, right?
Actually, you're not far off. If you want to be perfectly honest,
Don't at me
you're
like that,
not
Chris.
far
The
off.
book added us. The book added you, okay? River added you.
And then I went back to caring about ancient Egypt once I figured out that yo-yos were boring.
Take that, yo-yo.
What else was the Egyptology craze replaced by? I forget everything they listed. I just remember yo-yos in that sentence, and I'm like,
I had a very brief yo-yos moment.
I think we all
actually,
did.
Like
I feel like everyone had a brief, like in our generation.
Had the one that screwed
window
apart the fancy ones.
painting, like window puff paint. I went through a phase with that for a while, but and then I went back to being interested in ancient Egypt. But yeah, I just thought that was fun because it was like putting a character I'm familiar with in that context, and like it's not just like them being shell shocked by being in an old time era, because like obviously River's familiar with dealing with that kind of stuff. It was like, okay, we're gonna get over that initial hump of like, where am I? What the heck am I supposed to do? And went right to, okay, let's do some stuff. Like we've hit the ground running, and let's have some fun with it. And then like adding in that there was a silence
Mhm.
in the tomb, like having some familiarity in there, but within a context that was like fun and relatively unfamiliar in terms of how we're used to living today.
There was a lot less time travel in this than I was expecting, like going into it. Where like in a franchise that's all about time travel, like we really only go to 3 places. And by no means is that a complaint. It was like I definitely feel like there's a different way of telling the story that would have very much got bogged down with like, oh, we're on the 12th location and something like that. But like really not knowing anything about this book going into it, I definitely expected us to go and see more like known locations in Doctor Who. But we really like Stormcage is really the only place that we go to that we really know of. Like obviously there's episodes that take place in New York, but that was just something that going into it I expected more of. Again, not as a complaint. And then I liked that we got to see River in 1930s as well as seeing her take on 1930s through the book. I thought that was pretty interesting. So that's probably my favorite of the time periods.
I was confused, kind of. Like, in her narration, she makes it out like time travel is no big deal. And she just does it all the time. But then there wasn't a lot of time travel, and she talked, like, made it sound complicated. I'm like, which is it? Kind of situation. I'm like, okay. So it felt underutilized, I guess, in a sense. References it, but I don't know. Time travel is always hard to do. But I think in general it handles it well, like for in terms of like everything they did was provided continuity. Like there's no specific point that you can like kind of pick out and be like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Kind of explaining it, and like as Cameron mentioned, like the referencing of the time travel with her salvation was cool. It's just like a small little like piece though. It's just like a in passing reference. But yeah, favorite period probably be ancient Egypt though. Like and like you mentioned, seeing Cleopatra and that interaction. It's my favorite time period. Everything else in that time period though was kind of meh. Like, I went through 3 guides or 5 guides. I don't know how many it was.
3 guides. I liked Cat Malone though.
But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was enough time travel. Didn't overdo it.
That's the
but
hard
we
part.
still
It's
got
like,
to see, yeah, got to see like some very different places and times, which I felt was sufficient.
Mhm.
And
who all can time travel? That's my biggest question. I'm like, is it just a device? Was that the explanation? I guess that's where I'm confused. I'm not familiar with Doctor Who. So I'm like, is it just this watch device that allows you to time travel? So like everyone in the future can do it?
So
I
theoretically anyone could.
Like
theoretically, yes. I think there is a thing in place within the universe where the vortex manipulators are like highly controlled. Like this also may just be something that I'm making up, but I feel like they're one of those objects. I feel like there's something somewhere where it's like there's something that there's several out there, but they're like strictly managed.
because like we go from being in prison and she's like withhold like not I'm not gonna tell him I actually bought this typewriter in 19 whatever New York, but the next thing you know Venturion's out gallivanting across the timeline. I'm like, wait, it's like so he shouldn't be surprised that you
things
actually
change
bought...
when there's mobsters involved.
Yeah, suddenly things change, and also like the mobsters can time travel because she runs into them in New York or death.
So the mobsters just live in New York.
So like that's probably where I got most confused. Is just like okay, so at first like early in the story she's like, yeah, I do it, but I was born into the time vortex. I'm like, okay, sure, you're special this way, makes sense, okay. And then suddenly everyone's time hopping. I'm like, whatever. I just ignored it and moved on and just took it at its value, but it made me a little curious. I'm like, okay, so how does this work? Who can do it?
So there are like, and obviously Emma and Shanine, correct me if I'm representing this wrong, but there are like consequences to time traveling. Like, and so it's one of those that like theoretically anyone could use the vortex manipulator, but it's not something that like there's a lot of, and it's not something that everyone would be okay doing. Like it kind of gets to that with Ventrion, where it talks about how like the toll it takes on him, and how it's even like not pleasant for River to do, but it's not bad. And then like there's safer ways of time traveling, like the TARDIS, but there's not, like those are just something that Time Lords have, and they have companions that they take with them. But like in this show, like the vortex manipulators are presented as being dangerous to use, like very easy to mess up.
Yeah.
So it's not something that like,
Well, and you're more
is well known.
exposed to like the. It goes more into in the TV show too. Like, it is more dangerous because you get exposed to more stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's
all
mostly
that.
just like
Mhm.
early on, it does kind of provide that introduction, but it's like no big deal for River. And then kind of talks about like the complications in the book a little bit, like when she does it. But I was like, wait, okay. I just stopped asking. I was like, okay, whatever. It's time is hard to do in any medium and explain and do right. So I just didn't ask too many questions, but it's still stuck in my head.
Fair.
Cause it's just she talks about like it nonchalantly. I'm like, okay, whatever. But then everyone's doing it.
All right. Just a quick one for the Doctor Who fans. What references did you catch and what was your favorite?
so I loved the encyclopedia one because it is so contrived and like literally is only there to be a reference. Where it's like, it's the first one's like A through C, and then the second one is Da through Lek.
Yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't even work. And like, they just skipped like all of the letter C in this encyclopedia. Let alone
I
the
was
fact,
wondering how many people would pick
Yeah.
up on that one.
like, let alone the fact that like basically the whole first half of the alphabet is in this one edition. Like, but I just loved how blatantly a reference it was. Like, we need to put the word Dalek in here somewhere. Like, we're gonna put it here, deal with it. Like, I just loved that. Like, it's so much of just the like, not to be like, oh, you didn't try, but so much of just like, we're gonna ham fist this reference in and you're gonna like it. And I did.
I'm gonna go for my own ham-fisted one because I feel like someone would notice the Dalek. I don't know if anyone else picked up on this one. Shanine, maybe. How long are you planning to camp out in my office? It could get rather awkward. We're decades too early to be able to call for pizza, and there's nothing good on the telly until 1963.
Yep.
And so I figured Shanine would get it, but for
I
no one
assume
else
that's
who
when it
does,
premiered, right?
1963 was the first year of Doctor Who officially. And I read the sentence and I was like, wait, 1963. That's when it started. So they're literally saying nothing good was on TV until Doctor Who started. And this is a Doctor Who book. So I was just like, hey, I see what you're doing. That was one of my most favorite references to itself, was just, y'all calling yourself the only good thing on TV. I got you.
Yep.
That was just one of my favorite moments of like, you're being way too self-aware right now, and I appreciate it. So
That was gonna be mine, but I will share. Libraries aren't really my bag. Creepy places full of silence and shadows.
yeah.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
In chat, Deanna calls out that in 1963 it was supposed to air when JFK was assassinated.
Yeah, that's my
So-
fun fact about it. Fun. I mean, it's a
Right.
sad fact.
Right.
It aired the day after he got shot. Yeah. So that's how, honestly, that's how I remember when JFK was killed. Like, that's my benchmark, which is also kind of sad, but you know.
But he's not dead.
Is this some conspiracy theory of yours, Chris?
Not mine. You went on.
Not of his, unfortunately.
He was supposed to come back somewhere in Texas like a few weeks ago. Come on. And JFK, his son, Jr. was supposed to come back too.
Okay, Chris, you have fun with that.
There was a gathering.
Okay, Chris, you have fun with that.
Just don't watch.
Is there
conservative
a
news.
is there a list of all the references? Like that was definitely something that I was
no.
one. I was because like the 1963 one, that was one that like in my head I was like, I feel like that's when Doctor Who launched, but like I didn't remember that until like we were just talking about it.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those that like I kind of breezed past, and I'm like, Doctor
Yeah.
Who started around the 60s, and I kind of just like went
That's
past
when
it.
you have to like. It's very much a nod to either people who grew up with it in the 60s and 70s
Yeah.
and whatever, or people like Shanine and I who are like super into it and know that stuff for a fact. Like it's a very easy thing to breeze past, and it is a very silent nod.
Mhm.
But I am sure that someone either has or will go through and log all of the references.
Because it's one that like, especially as somebody like I've only seen up like halfway through Peter Capaldi. Like I know that there's a lot that I probably missed from the eras of Doctor Who that I've watched, let alone the like 4.5 seasons of Doctor Who that I haven't seen. So
Raptocoricofallapatorius. One of my favorite words to say in high school. Raptocoricofallapatorius. I tried to learn how to spell it once, but I did not get very far because I'm a terrible speller. But that was a reference to David Tennant era, I think, with the giant babies that were secretly hiding as the prime minister, I think. They had bad flatulence or whatever.
oh right.
The giant babies.
Yes.
That's what I call
I know what you're talking about now.
them. Yeah. They look like giant creepy babies. Anyway. My definitions for the various aliens in Doctor Who is very unique.
All right. Any favorite quotes to share?
I can only reference it. The Egyptology quote was definitely my favorite. But I don't. If someone wants to find it, throw it up there. But you don't.
I found one like towards the end last night as I was finishing this, and then now I can't remember what it was. Like I should have underlined it or like dog-eared the page or something, but
We're doing quotes.
here we are.
I have a couple. My first one, Shanine, you touched very briefly on this topic a little earlier. But it was a line that I marked because I could relate to it. It all adds up, and by the end of a week, somehow you've only written 6 words, and 2 of them are chapter 1. And I just thought, I was like, yeah, that's relatable. Like I feel that, like that's a whole mood. I tend to go for the funny stuff because I like funny stuff. The other one I marked, bad enough being a female PI. Can you imagine what it's like when you're called Melody Song on top of that? Might as well be called Miss Tooney McToonface.
That was a good one. I liked that one.
And it reminded me of Bodie McBoatface.
Right.
And I was just like, hey, Tooney McToonface. That was my other favorite one.
I tend to go in the other direction.
The more serious stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have, we study the past to learn about ourselves, and I happen to think I'm worth the effort. Slightly more serious with a little bit of sass. And also, but healing used up so much more power than hurting. Isn't that always the case?
I did like that
It's
one.
like, oof. Yep. All right. Did you notice any biblical references or theological themes?
The quote you just said.
Tell me more.
I don't know. It kind of puts into perspective, like, just the amount, like, in general, creating anything, even like sub-creation, takes so much more time and effort. But to take anything down, like, even like just looking at the Garden of Eden, you know, the creation took forever, or I mean, 7 days, but then a simple bite of a fruit brought everything toppling down.
I mean, I think River's whole quest to avoid universal control is a solid representation of, in some ways, the devil's need for total power, if you will. Like,
I'm telling you,
River was just the fight for good. It's the fight for good and the whole universe.
It's very Jesus being tempted in the desert.
Yeah. And even like she even had those moments of being tempted by this power that she was in contact with and pulling back. And it's a very admirable thing to take on, knowing the risks and still doing everything in your own power to not give in.
I think one of the big ones is kind of like what can you do to help your neighbor? Of like obviously River could have been breaking everyone out of Storm Cage, but like that's not what she's doing. And then like we get to the Ventrian thing, and like we get to, well, like I might take more flack, but this is the type of help that like the greater good kind of thing. And then I think kind of through that we get to the idea. I think this is kind of a major one throughout Doctor Who as well, or as a whole. But the idea of like what is within your power versus when do you need to rely on others. And like we get that I think a bit less here, since like she doesn't really have like a companion throughout this, or like a consistent companion. But we get these ideas of like, even going back to the Caesar thing of, this is a fixed point in time, Chris. Hey, Chris, did you know this was a fixed point in time?
Are we talking about the death of Caesar? We must be talking about the death of Caesar, because that's a fixed point in time.
Because it is a fixed point in time. So even with that idea, I think ties into that, like that theme of that there are things beyond our control, and we have to learn what we can work within. When do we need God to work in bigger ways than what we're able to do? Like when is there, or when is it like, when are those moments, I guess, that we need to try to give up control, is maybe what I'm trying to get at there.
One theme that stood out to me was the idea of home, and how River talked a lot about how she had a lot of places she had lived, but no place that was really home for her.
That was the quote I wanted to bring up that I'd forgotten. So thank you, Janine.
A rotating selection of homes.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the exact verbiage of it, but I remember / know what you're talking about, Cameron.
And yeah, I guess that just got me thinking about like the feeling of belonging and home that we have with Jesus, and the idea that no place in this world is our home.
Mm-hmm.
And then also one more quote stood out to me. When River and Melody are like destroying the device together, River says about Melody, she found how someone could cherish the whole universe and how our lives, as precious as they were to ourselves, could do nothing but serve a love that big. Yeah, I guess. Just thinking about God's love for us and how like we can hold our lives as precious and do what we want with them, but the most important thing that we'll do is love the God who loves us. All right. Any final thoughts or anything else that stood out to you?
I would have liked to see more with the cat. Honestly. Like, I feel like that was a version of Melody's character that was a bit more lighthearted, and there was a more fun, like, back and forth repertoire between the cat and River. That, yeah, I mean, that's the only thing, but
So the ruby is the One Ring. River is Galadriel, and
Chris, we
really
can't
they
hear you.
just needed a
Oh,
what?
there we go.
And really they just needed a hobbit to take the ruby to Egypt.
there you go.
That's what I got from the book.
Mhm.
I'm like, hey, and like just like so much of her language, like around like what she would do with the power is like very much that monologue from Galadriel.
For me, I was very surprised we never actually saw the Doctor show up.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, the Doctor gets referenced quite a bit, and including the current Doctor. But I was very surprised that like the Doctor basically like gets no lines in this and is basically just kind of like in the background. So again, and I feel like I'm saying that in the same thing as like the time travel thing of it's not a problem. I'm glad that like the Doctor didn't show up and save the day. Like literally show up and save the day, I guess. But it was one of those that definitely surprised me that we interacted with 0 incarnations of the Doctor in person.
All right. One thing that I just thought was fun was the only footnote in the entire book said, spoiler, I was right. Just popping back to say I explain it all on page 250. See if you can get there before I do. Just don't skip ahead. I might be in a book now, but that doesn't mean you can cheat. And I just enjoyed that.
I did as well.
Yeah. A little bit of commentary.
All right. Final fun question. So at the end of the book, River has actually met Melody, and she is having a conversation with her mom about the writing of Melody Malone books. And Amy says, "We talked about me taking over, didn't we? I think perhaps I should start now. You won't be able to write about her anymore. She's too real to you. So, what characters have become real to you? Just from anything. And what is their significance to you?
Before we get into it, I thought that this is a very good quote on like the commentary of like the challenge of fan fiction of like
Yeah.
if you're writing about something that's too personal, like you have this like often like this super idealized version of that character. And like I thought that was like I thought that was a very interesting like tie-in with this of like some things are too close to home or some characters mean too much to you. And I like that we kind of got that call out. I thought that was is a very interesting thing to pull in, um, especially like with how it ties in with other themes. And so, like thinking of it in that way, I mean, Aang is probably the biggest one for me. Like that's the type of character that I have a very specific view of that character, and I would very much struggle to not have have him act the way that he acts in my head.
And like Korra tries to break it down a little bit for you, like the idealized version. It's like he
Yeah.
wasn't a good father. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think for me, actually, the Doctor is very much the same or in a very similar place, but partially because Doctor has been a part of my life for so long. Like I literally started watching Doctor Who in like 2008. So that's like what 13 years, 14 years. So like it's such a familiar character no matter the incarnation and the personality. Like it's such a familiar concept at this point that it's like there's a sense of home there for me of like familiarity and also just like love that it's like this character is so like real to me. I'm so involved in the story now that it's just like yeah.
I'm not sure I have a character necessarily like that. Kind of a cop out, but I'm trying to think. So you're gonna go first, Janine. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, without defaulting to the Doctor, I guess I'll just have to default to Aslan. Um,
Jesus.
What?
I don't know, Aslan and also Lucy. I think she's always felt the most real out of the Pevensies to me. Um, yeah, she has genuine struggles, but also very genuine joy. And I just love her.
I yeah, I still got nothing. Okay, we're gonna go with Vivi from Final Fantasy IX because that's my default. Um, just Vivi's story is he gets developed so well in that as a and like as a something that was manufactured kind of gain sentience and having to struggle with that and kind of coming across the world and dealing with finding others like him and then dealing with the inevitable truth that they eventually stop functioning in just a and kind of portraying death in a different sense and then kind of also still leaving it open-ended whether or not like in his story, like whether or not he did ultimately cease functioning or something, him and his friends found something to keep him going. I don't know, that the end of that plot line is heart-wrenching to me still. Every time I think about it, it's like, did they figure it out? Did he get to continue being with his friends? I don't know. Where's Vivi? But also, like, even being okay with the ultimate end of his existence, kind of ceasing function. Yeah, I love Vivi. Everyone should play 9. Possibly being remade. I don't know, according to the video.
Alrighty. Final thoughts. Do you recommend this book?
A fun read.
It's a fun read.
It's not super thought provoking if you're looking for something along that route, but it's a fun, easy read.
It's a toss-up for me. Like, I can definitely see this being kind of a book, hey, read this and then possibly get into Doctor Who because you want to figure out all the references. But also, I don't want to watch Doctor Who and figure out all the references at the same time.
You don't want to know about Raxacoricofallapatorius?
No. How much of Cleopatra is in the series?
Like one scene.
Oh no, I don't care.
Yeah. Chris is just in it for Cleopatra.
I need a spin-off series, okay? Just focusing on what happened as a result of this book in ancient Egypt, okay? That's what I need.
For me, I'd say if you like River, definitely read it. Like I don't think it's going to change your perspective on anything Doctor Who. Like I don't think it's the type of book that, like, if you're in Chris's case, like, just to go off that, of like, I don't think this is going to be the thing that changes your mind on the franchise. And if you don't like River, like, I don't think this is going to change your mind on her. But like, if you're like me and you like that character, it's definitely a great read. So.
I super enjoyed it. And I think if you like Doctor Who, you will also enjoy it. Now I want to watch Doctor Who.
I kind of want to go watch Silence in the Library.
Right.
I will say, like, if you like heist/mystery books, I think this is probably a good, simple, quick read for you as well. Like, it does reference Sherlock in it, so that's cool. And Poe.
There's a lot of Poe.
A few really random Poe references. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our next book club will be on a date TBD as we figure out how to work around holidays.
It'll
But
be
we
in
will-
2 weeks, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
It'll be this Monday.
The only one prepared is Chris.
Technically, probably true.
As long as, yeah, if you get the audiobook.
I've
Even
already
I
read
wouldn't
it.
be
Hammer
ready
it
by
out
then
this
with an
weekend.
audiobook.
It is an easy read, I will say.
What's an easy read?
Yeah, Shanine, what's an easy read?
All right. So, since we are all super duper excited for season 2 of The Witcher coming out in December, we will be reading The Last Wish by Andrei Sapkowski.
I do have to say I'm also excited about this because I've been meaning to read the books for a while now since I liked the TV show. So I'm glad to at least be reading the first one. So
Mhm.
like I'm just excited about reading the books because I always like reading the source material for like TV shows and movies and things if I like that visual media. So like I'm just excited to read the book.
I am going to clarify that. Yes, The Last Wish is the first book in a sense, but it is not the first book in another sense. So
Is
technically,
it like Narnia where he wrote it first, but then it takes place later in the timeline?
it's more
whatever.
of a book of Witcher stories.
I mean, it's still a book of
than
Witcher
it
stories.
is the
Like
first book of the series. So the Blood
I'm
of
just
Elves
excited to be
is the
reading
first
something Witcher.
numbered book of the Witcher series. Like this isn't a numbered book, is what I guess what I'm trying to say. But definitely a great starting point because the Blood of Elves is actually not a good starting point. Just throwing it
I'm
out
just
there.
excited to be reading something from the series. Like I've been meaning to for a while, but because I've been so busy, I haven't. So, yay!
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's the
All
first of the
right.
collections of short stories, followed by the Sword of Destiny, right? Yeah, maybe. Sorry. Okay, I'm done clarifying. Maybe. Yes. Okay, go.
Are you?
we
Are you
can
really?
discuss this on next month's book club. All right. Great Whovian book club, everyone.
Yay!
I believe in all of us.
Whoovie.
Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Hey Dave, I've got cake. Woohoo! That was my middle school reference from behind the scenes with David Tennant and John Barrowman. I have a lot of random stuff in my head that I could reference if I wanted to.
All
I was a
right.
weird middle schooler. You don't want to know.
We are First Geek 411. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Come chat with us on our Discord server, where we will also be announcing the date of our book club. So make sure you join us over there. Check out our Redbubble store. Email us at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch us live on Twitch and find our videos on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out our website at onegeek411.com. You can find me on Twitter at Hoot and Howl and on Instagram at Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES.
You can find me at I Am Not Prepared with an I on all media platforms.
You can find me as Humar Whittle on all social media.
And I'm not so foreign, and I taught a Travis.
Read a book.
Come visit us on Raxicorico Fallipatorius.
Wash your hands.
I love you.